Joining the FPA and getting involved in FPA leadership was a prime example of putting myself in situations that I was very uncomfortable being in early in my career, but being able to show up in the Financial Planning Association locally and nationally helped me to be better at having conversations with clients, having conversations with my superiors, being able to start showing up in places that I was previously scared to, helped me to show up with my clients, helped me to show up by getting my CFP, helped me to show up in so many different areas that I wouldn't have pursued without that first initial leap of faith.
Hey everyone, welcome back to season 4 of the Blueprint and FPA NexGen Podcast. I'm one of the hosts, Mike Zarrelli, joined here with my co-host, Alison Miller, and our producer, Jada Riley. How are you doing, guys, today?
Doing well, excited to kick off season 4 and have another great season of financial planning funness.
I'm excited for the season ahead and excited to kick things off today.
We've been talking about as a podcast, and this even goes back to when Deshaun and Riley were part of the team, is this podcast is not our podcast. This is for the listeners. And so over time, it should evolve, not only with who's hosting it, but also who we're interviewing and what questions we're asking. And so one shift we have for this season is we have a little intentional word that we're bringing to the season. So Alison, it was kind of your lead, so why don't you tell them about the word for the season?
We wanted to set an intention for season 4 to help guide a common theme for our conversations that we have with guests. And so very excited to say that the intention for this season is Ignite. We wanted to focus on how do we ignite our listeners to take that next step in their career? How do we ignite each other as professionals to develop our personalities and how we communicate with clients, how we communicate with colleagues, and how we communicate with our community? We wanted to focus on what other successful professionals in our field have ignited to create that professional success and the personal success in their field. And we also wanted to see how we could ignite the podcast to be more rewarding for the listener. We wanted to figure out how can we ignite our conversations with the information that our listeners want to find out most. And so I'm going to pass the baton on to Jada to talk about how we are intentionally creating a form to get feedback from y'all, our most valued client.
We have been really intentional about engaging our audience. We want to hear from you. We want to hear about who you'd like us to have on the show, what questions you'd like us to ask, because it's really about igniting your careers, and what better way to help facilitate an episode or a season of information to help support you in that journey than to hear directly from our audience. So you'll see it in our content. We'll be sending that out as we post new episodes. It'll be a link where you can give us your feedback. You can let us know who you are or not, but the main purpose is to just hear exactly what would be most helpful for you this season as we invite new guests and talk about new topics. We want to hear exactly what's most important to you. So thank you for that, Alison. I'm really excited. And as producer, I'll be reading all of your feedback and integrating it into the season's episodes.
You know, there's so much going on in the world right now. You got so many podcasts. You can watch YouTube. You got Netflix. So the fact that you guys are listening, investing time in this podcast, even if it's only 30 minutes and you're listening at 2 times speed, it's a big investment of your time. So we want to make sure this is a good format, good topics, something that you can actually take away and apply to your own career. That's the goal of the podcast. The last thing I wanted to say, it's so cool to see, like we've seen this with volunteering with the FPA, is that one set of group is working on setting stuff up, setting the foundation, and then the next group comes along and they can build on that foundation with new ideas. And so we're just seeing it firsthand with the podcast too. You guys have been great additions to our original cast of Deshaun, me, and Riley.
It's really so much fun to watch how things evolve over time, because you see it in your own career of how you started, where you are now, where you're intending to go, and what steps that ends up taking. And it's usually not a linear path. And then seeing that with involvement in the FPA, of seeing from an idea of this would be a fun resource to have for next gen planners, to putting in the first season of this is how we're going to kind of structure it, to see what structure makes the most sense and how we can best help the listeners profess in their career. It is a privilege to be in this position, to be able to help so many different people, and a privilege to try to figure out how we can do that and listen to how our listeners believe that we can best do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd like to think of it as that confidant or that mentor that I wish I had when I was starting out in my career. We really want the podcast to be a resource for everyone out there in that first 10 years, really getting started in your career. So anything that you'll find helpful, we definitely want to hear about it, and we'll do our best to incorporate it in this season. And I think perpetually, if there's requests that we feel will help inspire and support the listeners, we'll definitely continue to incorporate those themes, ask those questions.
Yeah, and I think we did a great job. Of course, not all the guests are booked yet, and I haven't said yes yet, but the guest list that we came up with does a really good job that there's going to be something for everybody, whether it is a very experienced leader in the industry or just somebody that is on the cusp of igniting their career. We've got everything in between: career changers, some people that will talk about the CFP exam, and compensation. I mean, that's always a big topic and kind of a spooky one to talk through. We're going to unveil, on the heels of our Ignite word, two questions that are going to be kind of our staples for this season. And the first one is, what did you start or stop doing that accelerated your career? What did you start or stop doing that accelerated your career? That's a pretty interesting one. Like, that's a tricky one.
Whatever I stopped doing was I stopped listening to the voice in my head that said that you can't do this or that's not where you're supposed to be. And I started putting myself out there more. And so we're part of the FPA podcast, but joining the FPA and getting involved in FPA leadership was a prime example of putting myself in situations that I was very uncomfortable being in early in my career, but being able to show up in the Financial Planning Association locally and nationally helped me to be better at having conversations with clients, having conversations with my superiors, and being able to be confident in the financial planner that I am. So being able to start showing up in places that I was previously scared to helped me to show up with my clients, helped me to show up by getting my CFP, helped me to show up in so many different areas that I wouldn't have pursued without that first initial leap of faith. So that's something I'm very grateful for, that I started pretty early in my career, that I feel really helped accelerate an early career of success, both within my financial planning involvement and with my financial planning job.
Let's dig in there a little bit. Somebody that's not a part of FPA would be like, how is hanging out with other financial advisors make you better at talking with clients and dealing with clients? So is there like a specific example of how being active in FPA impacted clients?
Being able to meet with other financial planners, you get to brainstorm financial planning scenarios together. You get to talk about best practices to tackle certain problems that you face regularly in our line of work. So being able to meet with more tenured financial planners, other like-minded next-gen financial planners, other women financial planners, being able to talk and learn from all of them on how they've handled certain client situations has helped me immensely with how I go about handling my own client situations. And being able to be comfortable public speaking, be comfortable speaking with professionals that have decades more experience than I have, has helped me feel more comfortable being client facing and talking to the clients and feeling confident in the words that I use and the ways that I explained certain concepts that I wouldn't have been able to develop without being put in those rooms with those people.
In a way, by being active in FPA, it's Toastmasters, but specifically for financial advisors. So it helps.
Exactly.
It's easier to get over that hump. Last week you texted me, do you have an attorney in Maryland? Like that is,
Yeah.
I just really smiled when you texted me, because I was like, that's so cool that we can do that now. We've built relationships where we can help each other just work with clients. There's plenty of clients to go around, so it's not like it's a competitive thing.
A rising tide lifts all boats. And it's so nice to be able to watch your friends succeed and not feel like if they succeed, it takes away from my success. It helps get rid of a toxic narrative with career growth.
Especially if you can join a mastermind. We have a group chat and somebody closed some business and they texted about it, and we're able to just be like, that's so awesome. Like that, great job. You deserve a beer kind of a thing. All right, Jada, let's hear yours.
This is like a very early career, I would say, habit that I had, and it was asking the question or making the proposal, even when it's uncomfortable to do so. I think sometimes, especially as we go from associate advisor to lead advisor or whatever our path might be in our career, I think it's really uncomfortable early on to ask the question that might seem silly, but I think being radically comfortable with asking questions and also
Mhm.
proposing things. Sometimes you see things in planning. The beauty of this profession is that, yes, there's a science, but there's also an art, and you have that ability to get to the same end result for your client by taking multiple paths. And sometimes there's a path that'll be shorter and of least resistance. And I think working with advisors who I believe are truly talented, just really, really experienced in our industry. I think sometimes it can be intimidating early on, but I think that's asking those questions. And even if you're wrong, I think just building that habit of doing it anyway, pushing past that uncomfortable feeling is really helpful because for every time I made a proposal or said, "Hey, can't we just do it this way? Or could we make this decision and that accomplish all of our goals?" For every time that I was wrong, there's probably a couple of more times that I've been right and it has been helpful. And I think it's really easy to, especially early on when you're still in the learning phase, not really feel comfortable doing that. So I think the earlier you can be comfortable being incorrect, asking the silly question and leaning into that. I think for everything that we don't do, there's someone in the room who probably will not accelerate as fast just because they weren't comfortable being uncomfortable earlier on. So I think that's one of the biggest things is just when you hear that little voice inside your head, like, no, don't ask the question, like maybe that's silly. Ask it anyway. Or maybe you want to propose something, but you're not sure, and perhaps you don't want to make it seem like you're contesting your lead advisor if you're still in an associate role. Perhaps you're an earlier planner, you're earlier in your career, and you maybe think you have it all mapped out, but maybe you think of something a little bit later that's a better fit for your client. Just be comfortable pushing through that. And I think for me, that was super helpful making the ask no matter what you're feeling. I think it'll get you really far early on.
Because it's a big jump to go from a person that is shy and doesn't ask questions or doesn't have the confidence to someone that does.
Yeah.
So what helped you get that confidence to start asking questions?
I think pushing through and then getting it right. Many moons ago, having gone through a divorce with a client and doing some planning on that end, and just seeing a major opportunity to save our client really valuable tax dollars and being a little nervous to ask about it. Well, I guess being very nervous to ask about it because it wasn't something the lead planner had initially thought about some years ago. But proposing that in the prep meeting, and we had a great conversation. It's like, wow, yeah, we need to definitely bring this up to our client and their attorney. That's a great idea, and we move forth with a strategy that I proposed. And I think you just need that one win early on, and I think it really helps your confidence when you second guess yourself, but you do it anyway, and it was the right decision. So I think that was the biggest thing for me.
Throw it back to you, Mike. Now, what did you start or stop doing that accelerated your career?
I'll start with the first thing I started doing. And Allison, this relates to your confidence, building confidence post, which was I started posting content. A couple years ago, I made it a very methodical thing that I wanted to post on LinkedIn. I wanted to become a LinkedIn guy. And to date, I have gotten zero referrals, zero prospects, zero clients. But it has been the single most enhancing thing for me because I feel confident in my voice. I know how to write. I have a style of financial planning. I always say there's three steps to growing a career. First is just getting your knowledge and the CFP down. Step two is learning how to present and explain financial concepts. And then step three is finding your own style of financial planning. One that's a little bit different from your lead advisor, a little bit different from the owner, your own way to explain financial concepts. And I can't say the best way to do it is to create content, whether it's written, whether it's blogs, whether it's videos. I definitely think the videos help because you get that public speaking component to it and you get more confident being in front of camera, especially now we're on Zoom all the time. You got to be on camera almost all day. So all those add in together to build a lot more confidence in your own voice. And again, it's the style, the way that you explain things that really starts to develop. So then, Jada, for you, you said start proposing things, ask questions, and get to how can we do this better? Absolutely, especially for this new age of young advisors where they're going into already established firms and there's maybe a career ladder. They start at the paraplanner level and they start working their way up. Start proposing things. Start speaking up. Yes, you're going to have the head trash, and I had the head trash. What do I know? I wasn't even around in 2008. So they're going to discredit whatever I bring up that we could do something better or service clients better. And that's what it is, head trash. Start bringing it up. Of course, do the work, do the research, come very prepared, and even be prepared to help implement it, whatever that means for whatever you're suggesting. But yeah, start proposing things and see how you can have an impact on your firm. If you can't be an entrepreneur, be an entrepreneur. Work within the business to make it better.
What's an example of finding your voice, being able to help your client and your firm at the end of the day?
Love that question. And when you're forcing yourself to create content, you got to think of like mental models to do things. I'm already a processes and systems type of person because I have to post something and you want it to be relatable to the masses. Creating frameworks is an easy way to do that. So I'll give a quick example. When I'm talking to a prospect, I say, we got to get your vitals. I want to go through your ABCs of finances. And it stands for aspirations, balance sheet, cash flow. And so every single time, or whether I'm writing it or talking with a client, I've got this mental framework that's unique to me. It's written down in my playbook to pull that out every single time. So when you're forced to write things, you start writing out or figuring out, testing, how do I think about financial planning? How do I see money? Which is going to be unique and different to everybody else because of your own experiences with money.
How have you gone about developing your own style? Like, I know a lot of financial planners get their style by taking a little bit of what they've seen this lead advisor do, take what I like from here, and then you add your own twist to it. But how have you refined that and are currently refining it to your own specific style?
And it was definitely part of that. In my firm, I had 3 or 4 lead advisors I was learning from. So I was pulling a little bit from there, a little bit here. The 2 main advisors, they're really great at analogies. Client brings up taxes, they've got an analogy for it. My other advisor, she's just really good at being empathetic and asking great questions. So I'm pulling some from that. As I was pulling these different skill sets from these advisors, what is my natural instinct? What do I want to do when I'm explaining something to a client? I realized I want to pull out a pen and paper. I want to write something down. I want to draw something so they can visually see it while I'm explaining it. So I leaned into that. So I knew that was a strength. I leaned into it. Even got this little pad right here where I can pull a pencil out, draw on it. It shows up on screen. And from there, I just focused on how do I get better at this? How do I tell more stories through writing and explaining, which again pulls into the frameworks. It's something easy you can write on the screen, A, B, C, and the client can understand where you're heading, where you're going.
From there, I'm going to naturally transition to our second keystone question for the season. What skill mattered more than you expected in your career?
In this industry, it's all about the reps and you have to show up for them. We've talked about it so many times, like through every single guest, it's about, I just kept doing it. I kept doing it. And eventually you hit that curve, that inflection point where it starts going up. And like I've said, I'm one person that sticks to the processes and the systems. And that discipline has really helped. Like I finally feel like I'm on that up curve of the pendulum where it feels easier. And it's all because of the discipline of showing up consistently, working with clients, going into the meetings, sticking with the firm that I'm at, consistently posting content. And now it's just gotten easier. So it feels good to stick with things. That's probably the skill that's helped out the most. Jada, let's switch to you.
One skill that has been really valuable is the ability to receive feedback. I think we work
Mm,
so much to be able to deliver feedback, but I think we underestimate how important it is to be comfortable receiving feedback from your clients, feel comfortable receiving feedback from maybe some of the advisors you work with or the people on your team. Sometimes the initial reaction can be to become defensive, but feedback truly is a gift. And I do think I've learned so much more about myself and I've been able to get ahead more quickly just because I make it easy for people to be honest with me. And so I think as you're developing in your career, I think just really focus on how you can improve, but also make it really easy for people to be honest with you, and they will be. And I think not all feedback has to be negative, even as we talk up here about developing your style as an advisor, thinking about who you may feel energized when you're working with them. You can also ask about that feedback from the people who are around you. Like get as much information as possible and make it as easy as possible for the people around you to be honest about that. So I think that's a skill. I can't think of the exact quote, but I had read, early on when you're trying to learn anything, just make it really easy for people to coach you and teach you, and you'll learn more, they'll invest more in you. And so I think that's a skill that I developed early on. And now I always try to take the value from the feedback. You may agree, you may disagree, but just know that there's always something there that is of value, and being able to apply that. I think it's really difficult, even when you're out and you're interviewing or you're speaking with prospects, ask like, hey, is there anything that has you on the fence? Do you still have any reservations about anything? It's a really scary question to ask, but it lets you know at the end of whatever the interaction is where someone's still uncertain, and it gives you that opportunity to fill in that gap. So I would say hands down, that's been one of the biggest opportunities for me because I'm not afraid to ask where I can improve. And I think it really helped, especially early on.
how did you get over the sting of feedback? It still sucks to get it, but it's so crucial.
Yeah, I think as a career changer, really early on, going from a totally unrelated industry, pivoting into wealth management, financial services, I've been through a lot of job interviews, especially initially when I had no experience in our industry. I would ask at the end of interviews, is there anything you're still on the fence about? And at this point, I had nothing to lose because it's like I'm inexperienced. I'm acknowledging it. They know where I'm coming from. They know how much experience I have. I can't hide it, flashing that flashlight even further, like standing in the spotlight and asking at the end. And they're like, well, this is what I'm concerned about. I think I'd gotten the feedback that I wasn't well versed in their planning software. They wanted someone up and running. And so I was able to find like a cool demo that I could take over the weekend. That was 6 hours. So when I went to the next interview, if that was a reservation, I would let them know, hey, I know I may not have experience with your tech stack, but I started looking for all these different opportunities to either do a demo, maybe pay, sit in on a training. But I think I would have never gotten that piece of feedback if I wasn't comfortable asking. And every
Mhm.
time I asked, I got another drop in the bucket and I could apply it when I went to the next interview. And I think as a career changer, you can probably identify with this over a span of time. I was able to collect all the different uncertainties from different firms. And I ended up getting multiple offers when I finally made my way into comprehensive financial planning. And it was really exciting. But it was because I made the ask and I got the data. When you get the data, don't let it hurt your feelings. You get the information and then you can apply it. And I think, especially shout out to all my career changers out there, I think it will really help you, and I think it can be applied to so many different contexts. So it's difficult. It's just like a little bit of grit. The worst that someone can say is no. I think we've all heard that quote. Nothing happens. You're not going to die. You're safe. Well, I think we all know this. Failure is a big part of success. You'll never meet anybody successful who hasn't had a history or has experienced some level of failure along the way. So maybe you do ask for feedback and maybe it isn't easy to hear, but over time, you being able to ask and implement will get you way further than never making the ask at all.
I love how you beat them to the chase of like,
Yeah.
hey, what's your reservations? Instead of them saying, no, we wish you had X. Like you beat them to the chase. That probably takes a little bit of the sting away.
Yeah, you ask like what has you on the fence, and then as you go into your next conversation, you can address those things before they become an area of concern for maybe a new group of people. Because the one thing about feedback is it tends to be consistent. And yes, everyone has their preferences and everyone has their own style. But if you can have a conversation and address all of someone's reservations before they even have the chance to ask about them or share them with you, it'll get you even further. And then I started asking that question, and the answer was no. The answer was we actually don't have any reservations. And when I say you can use it in any conversation, anything from job interviews to client interactions and any and everything in between, just be comfortable making the ask.
Cool. Okay, Allison, bring us home.
Yes, well, mine plays perfectly off of Jada's in that the skill set that mattered more than I thought it would is listening. I went to school and I practiced. I mean, we talked here about practicing with your public speaking, practicing with how you're explaining things. And that is a very important skill set to have. But I think early on, I put a lot of pressure on myself to be able to perfectly explain everything. I need to talk and explain everything throughout the entire meeting. It's my show teaching the client, which ended up not being true. The best meetings that I have, I probably talk about 20, 30% of the time, and I let the clients tell me what's going on in their life or their financial plan. And being able to develop my skill of listening to both what is said, what I'm seeing in their body language. And in person, you can see better than on Zoom, but listen to the context that's not explicitly being said in the meeting and develop what they're feeling about what you're saying and what they're saying. And so I have found that listening and developing my active listening skills have greatly helped my ability to be a good financial planner and show up in a way that I think best serves my clients at the end of the day. I try to be a good listener in every context now. I've realized that it's really important to every relationship that you have to be able to say that you actually heard and listened to what they said. I find myself a lot of times just listening. And while I was hearing what they were saying, I was just thinking about how I was going to respond to what they just said, rather than actually internalizing what they told me, taking a minute to digest that and come up with the best response after totally being there for them. Once I flipped that switch to not caring too much about how I came across or having the best answer teed up right away, I found that I was able to have much more productive meetings, get to the root that we wanted to solve for in their financial plan, and be a more effective leader throughout it all.
How do you fight that urge? Because it's like a normal urge to start preparing what you're going to say. But if you're right, if you take a second and just listen deeper, like it's going to deepen the relationship anyways.
It takes some practice outside of actually being in a conversation. So one thing that I started doing was meditating and being comfortable with silence, being comfortable redirecting my thoughts. Because if I just go off my baseline, I am naturally going to try thinking of my response before I finish hearing what they're saying. But through the practice of meditation, I've been able to train my brain a bit better to recognize when I start doing that and be able to switch to, no, I need to be able to listen to what they're saying because I might be preparing a response for a question I want them to be asking and not the question they're actually asking. And that was a big piece that I got from studying for my CFP was that a lot of times the CFP questions that I was studying for, sometimes my brain would short circuit and create a question that I wanted them to be asking me. And create the answer that best answered the question I wanted them to be asking me without fully reading the question they were actually asking. And so I've taken some study tips I've learned around the way, meditation tips I learned around the way, and have realized that they're universal. They apply in several contexts. And so being able to train your mind outside of client meetings helps you to be more present whenever you are in those situations.
Yeah, I feel like it goes back to that famous quote, be interested, not interesting. I think
Mhm.
it's just another context where people never respond poorly to being deeply heard. And I do think a big part of really helping someone is listening to them, is hearing them. And I think the more space that you put out there for your client to fill in, you get more information when you're doing less of the talking. It's like the two ears, one mouth thing. And I think it's easy to say, but in practice, it becomes more difficult. But being able to develop that muscle early on, again, really helpful because people, if you give them the space to share with you, most of the time they'll fill it in. And I think
Mhm.
most of our value comes from being able to see opportunities, maybe even ahead of the client. You can sense maybe other needs that they have or ways that you could better support them. So kudos to
Mhm.
you, Allison, for putting that into practice because I know it is, especially once we have all the shiny tools and all the competence we get excited to share and present, but it's really a listening game.
Because it's all so cliche, but it's so impactful. I think back about the first time I really noticed this with a client. It was probably just as I was starting to take on clients as the lead. And this poor little woman, old woman, lost her husband of 50 years. He managed all the finances. She calls me. Out of the 30-minute conversation, I maybe talked 2 minutes. And by the end, she was just thanking me so much for being there. And I just remember thinking, I didn't provide any value. I barely said anything. But to her, it really meant something that I just sat there and listened deeply.
And there's several tools now that can help you develop this skill. I know that there's several AI note takers out there that financial planners are using, and they'll calculate how much of the meeting you were talking versus other people were talking. So you can see point blank if you did talk the entire time. And as Jada said, data is powerful. You want to collect data so you can make decisions based on what the data shows you. And so being able to be aware of the fact that you may be talking throughout the majority of the meeting and maybe you should be listening more is the first step you really need to take to develop that skill. But it is such a powerful skill to help your clients, but also help yourself. It is one of those skill sets that I've learned because I knew it would be valuable for clients and it would make me a better financial planner. But a side effect is that I was learning a lot more from my clients by doing this. And I was learning a lot more from the advisors that I was learning under by implementing this. Because believe it or not, sometimes you do not know it all. And sometimes you can benefit from learning, which is why we have this podcast in general. It's why I listen to podcasts. It's why I have mentors. And being able to fully listen to what your clients have to teach you about their particular situation, about their life experiences, it really helps you develop a better sense of who that client is, but develop a better sense of how to tackle these types of situations the next time you run into it. And being able to listen to how advisors help certain clients in different situations helps you, like Mike referenced, with finding your style and figuring out how you would talk through that situation. And so listening was really one of those skills that helped me, yes, in client meetings, yes, helped me become a better financial planner, but I think has helped me in an immense way throughout various aspects of my life.
What's cool about everything we've talked about today is I think we've all experienced some of that growth in some different way, some form or fashion or another. Asking great questions, being active in FPA, listening deeply, like those are all facets that are going to make you a well-rounded advisor, especially working deeply with clients. I mean, it is a big responsibility. People are trusting you with their hard-earned money, and the only thing that's more sensitive than wealth is health. So we are right up there with needing to be protective, needing to be there for our clients over and above ourselves. This is a good conversation. I hope that gives a little bit of a premiere for what's coming up this season. We're going to get deeper with our guests. We're going to see what ignited their career. And any last words you guys would like to add?
This season, we're really excited to develop a new type of conversation with our listeners and with our guest.
And this season, we'll be taking your feedback. So definitely be honest. You can ask us anything that you may not feel comfortable asking someone at work or maybe someone who works on your team. Ask us the questions that you're not necessarily comfortable asking publicly, because we will ask them publicly because they can add value for one of our listeners or the majority of our listeners. You may have something that you're uncomfortable asking about that a lot of our listeners are uncomfortable asking about. So we really want to hear what's most important to you. And so I'm so happy Alison brought that up to close us out. Share, send us messages. We're always available. Connect with us on LinkedIn, and we're here to help.
Well, this has been The Blueprint, an FPA NexGen podcast. Season 4 is live. Thanks.